There's a flicker of memory, a younger Alec Igret, a mere child fishing aimlessly near the capital, when a striking magician named Elders stepped into his world. At first, the boy mistook him for some sort of manager, perhaps for the notorious Diddy, but Elders harbored a far more profound interest: magic. He began teaching Alec, not with dusty tomes or stern drills, but by urging the boy to envision the friends he would one day make, and the monsters he'd need to protect them from. These were trauma-infused lessons, perhaps, but they yielded swift results. Alec absorbed the arcane arts rapidly, though even then, a full day to grasp a single spell felt agonizingly slow, a sentiment Elders tried to temper by noting it took others a month. Eager for more, Alec pressed Elders for another spell, but the magician insisted one was enough for the day. Dissatisfaction gnawed at Alec, and the rest of their time together was spent fishing, Alec a picture of petulant silence, the very image of a pouty child. Yet Elders knew how to stir the embers of his student's potential, stroking his ego by declaring Alec possessed a rare talent, one that would blossom into greatness even without his tutelage, leaving it, he suggested, to fate. Shocked, Alec questioned Elders' very reason for teaching him in the first place. Before an answer could be drawn from the depths, a tug on the line brought a sudden panic to Elders, who had never before caught a fish. Alec, amused, helped him reel it in, remarking that a magician of his caliber should surely master the simple art of angling. Their life as student and teacher continued, Elders imparting a wealth of magical knowledge to Alec as time flowed onward. Then, one day, Elders announced his departure from the capital, a pronouncement that devastated Alec, for it meant a permanent farewell. Yet a final piece of counsel remained. If Alec ever had the chance to become a court magician, he should refuse. The cryptic advice left Alec bewildered, and he once again asked why Elders had even bothered teaching him. Elders, his usual gloom momentarily lifting, spoke of Alec's late mother, a woman who had once done him a great kindness. Teaching her son, he explained, was simply his way of repaying that debt. That was the last Alec saw of his teacher. Driven by a desire to reconnect, Alec dedicated himself to entering the Royal Magic Academy. There, a discovery awaited him. Elders himself had once been a student of the very same academy, graduating at its apex and swiftly ascending to the position of court magician. However, his tenure was cut short, ending in dismissal within a few years, a revelation that finally illuminated the true meaning behind Elders' warning. Against his teacher's counsel, Alec resolved to become a court magician, not for prestige, but to dismantle the inherent injustices of the imperial court from within. It was a long path, but he succeeded, achieving his goal. Yet, as fate would have it, he found himself regretting not heeding Elders' advice, a realization that struck him sharply when Crown Prince Regulus summarily dismissed him from his adventurer party deep within a dungeon. Puzzled, Alec pressed the prince for a reason. The blonde royal Regulus declared Alec useless. He recounted how Alec always held back, relegated to the rear, casting only pitiful support magic, while he, the fire magician Lenny, and the party's tanks took the risks on the front lines against monstrous foes. Regulus asserted they needed no such loser, no one unworthy of the title court magician. Alec attempted to explain his choice of magic, but Regulus refused to listen. Lenny chimed in, labeling Alec a coward who hampered their progress, and revealed their forced association was due to the king's order. Now that the prince had decided his fate, politeness was no longer necessary. Regulus sneered, suggesting Alec must have bought his top academy scores with favors. He then demanded to know why Alec carried a dagger, a weapon forbidden to commoners. Alec explained its necessity for the next dungeon floor, but Regulus, enraged, confiscated it. Grabbing Alec by the collar, the prince declared no one in his party disobeyed him, snatching away the court wizard's robe, deeming Alec unworthy. Devastated, Alec had no choice but to leave the dungeon. Yet, even after such humiliation, his instinct to help lingered. He compiled notes detailing strategies for the lower dungeon floors, particularly useful for Regulus, who lacked magic power. The following day, Alec approached the palace, intending to deliver these notes to the king. However, guards barred his way, informing him he'd been stripped of his court magician status, now just a commoner forbidden entry without permission. Shocked, he stood there until Lenny appeared, adding insult to injury, telling him to get lost. Alec pleaded with her to listen, to carry his notes to the king, the very man who had appointed him and ordered him into the prince's party. Lenny, however, snatched the notes, tore them to shreds and stomped on them before ordering the guards to expel the commoner. Left adrift and jobless, Alec finally understood the wisdom of Elders' warning. Just then, a familiar voice called his name. Turning, he saw a redhead who rushed forward and embraced him. For a moment, he was disoriented, then recognition dawned. Yora, an old friend from his academy days. As they sat to catch up, Alec recounted his dismissal from the prince's party and his court magician post. Yora, furious, cursed the kingdom's class-based discrimination. Alec managed to calm her, and she then declared his dismissal a good thing. Unhurt by her words after his recent ordeals, Alec was reminded of her promise, to one day have him join her party. Yora revealed she'd come to the capital precisely for that reason, extending her hand and inviting him to conquer dungeons together. Though his confidence had been shattered, Yora's unwavering faith in him, her insistence that no other magician could replace him, moved him deeply. He accepted her offer, and Yora welcomed him into a rank party. The next day, Alec left the country with Yora, the echo of Elders' advice to avoid becoming a court magician accompanying his dreams. News of Alec's departure reached Regulus and his party a few days later. They remained indifferent. Regulus recalled Alec's reputation as a genius among students and lamented the time wasted on him. Lenny, however, dismissed it, anticipating the arrival of a pure-blooded noble who would make their party far more powerful. Meanwhile, Alec and Yora arrived in Fizzle, the city of dungeons, a hub for adventurers where status was secondary. Yora, eager to register Alec, led them to the guild. Their hopes quickly soured when the receptionist denied Alec's registration. Their party ventured beyond floor 30, and he needed 2 years of guild membership to join. Yora's tantrum and pleas for an exception were met with refusal. She inquired about her friend Kra, who had apparently approached the guildmaster on Alec's behalf, but the receptionist remained unmoved, accustomed to such tactics. Dejected, Alec and Yora returned from the guild, seeking respite in a park. Over lunch, Yora revealed their party had reached floor 52, making a 2-year wait impossible. Undeterred, she proposed a solution. If they couldn't tackle deeper floors, they'd use shallower dungeons as a warm-up. Alec readily agreed, and they ventured into a low-level dungeon teeming with insect monsters. Yora, employing her reinforcement magic, surged ahead, a blur of speed, easily dispatching foes. But the situation escalated as the insect numbers seemed endless, their strength growing. Alec concurred, suspecting an anomaly within the nest, though he believed it manageable. As the fight intensified, Yora activated her shield and charged towards the nest. Alec warned her of the risk, but she countered that it was nothing, sensing he'd lost his edge, that the past Alec would have dealt with this easily. She urged him to trust her, to be his true self again. Alec realized she spoke the truth. He needed to reclaim his confidence. Remembering Elders' lesson about saving friends, he decided to go on the offensive. Swiftly dispatching monsters with fireballs, he then finished the rest with his dagger. A massive swarm descended, but Yora remained unconcerned, casting a barrier that gave Alec precious time to conjure a potent area of effect spell, disintegrating the insects. As calm returned, Yora commended him, assuring him he still had it. Suddenly the ground quaked, and a colossal earthworm erupted, nearly swallowing Yora. Alec vowed to save her, instructing her to activate her shield. Yora's trust was absolute. She cast her shield spell as Alec summoned a fire serpent, reducing the earthworm to ash. Yora, unharmed, rushed to him, reaffirming his prowess as an attack mage, their battle reminiscent of their academy days. Back then, they'd faced a formidable 5-headed dragon, its relentless assaults nearly overwhelming. But Alec, with sufficient preparation, had obliterated it with a single spell, clearing the 68th floor of the dungeon and setting a new academy record. Now Alec was poised to rejoin that same circle of friends who, as students, had not only conquered the 68th floor boss, but returned to the magical academy hailed as the finest cohort in years. Even their formidable instructor, Rossi, recognized something exceptional in their synergy, their seamless teamwork. They returned from the dungeons bearing scars but beaming with pride. having not merely reached, but utterly shattered the record for dungeon progression, far surpassing the previous record holders who'd only managed floor 32. Finally, graduation arrived, and Rosie announced the scores. Rain, 4th, Kra, 3rd, Yora, runner-up, and Alec, by a significant margin, the highest scorer in recent history, the class valedictorian. They celebrated, mocking their instructor, accepting their mock punishments with good humor. As they departed the academy, their fellow students watched, envious, witnessing the birth of what was undoubtedly destined to be a legendary adventuring party, unaware that Alec would soon choose a different path, that of a court magician. His party members were stunned, but understood the allure of the court magician's life easier, with better pay. Though disheartened, they harbored no blame and wished him well, Yora renewing her promise of a future reunion. In the present, that promise seemed to be unfolding. Alec and Yora celebrated in a bar, but after a single drink, Yora was completely inebriated, complaining about the dungeon restrictions before promptly falling asleep on the bench. Alec smiled, remembering her similar state during their academy days, a true S. He draped his jacket over her for warmth. A patron, however, took offense, approaching Alec, mocking his perceived subservience, a beta male. Alec ignored him, recognizing him as a fan of Andrew Tate, a man prone to anger issues. The patron raised his bottle, intending to strike Alec, but a mana shield effortlessly deflected the blow. The man, surprisingly, smiled, pleased to have finally garnered attention. He knew Alec was a court magician and expressed surprise that such an elite figure would be pursuing adventuring. This shift in mood puzzled Alec, but more so when the burly man produced an adventurer's pass, placing it on the table as an apology for his earlier aggression, with one condition: Alec must demonstrate his magic. Alec remained bewildered when Yora suddenly awoke, groggily identifying the man as the guildmaster and questioning his presence. Alec was at a loss, wondering why the guildmaster would simply hand over such a pass. The man, however, seemed easygoing, granting the pass before escorting them to the training grounds. He described it as an underground area where parties seeking to level up were tested and where Alec would prove his strength. Yora expressed concern, noting Alec had been drinking, but he assured them he still had sufficient mana. The guildmaster formally introduced himself as Levy, a name that resonated with Alec. He recognized Levy as a powerful mage who had once led an S-ranked party. Levy chuckled, dismissing those as distant memories, and clarified the simple requirement: Alec must impress him with his magical skills. The sparring session began. Alec initiated with a thunderbolt, expertly dodged by Levy, who retaliated with water balloons. Alec evaded them, realizing Levy held the advantage in range. He decided to shift tactics to close combat. To his surprise, Levy didn't retreat. Instead, slamming the ground, he amplified his speed with reinforcement magic and dashed towards Alec. Dodging at the last moment, Levy began circling Alec with incredible velocity, attempting a solid punch. Alec barely blocked it with his mana shield, but the force shattered it, sending him crashing into the walls. Levy, impressed by his resilience, remarked that few could survive such a blow. Yet Alec emerged from the dust, proclaiming Levy a true S-ranked adventurer. Levy, confused by Alec's nonchalance, expected fear. But Alec explained he was forgetting his past constraints as a court magician, bound by rules and limited to defensive magic. Now unbound, he could unleash his full offensive arsenal. Levy laughed, urging him to attack with full force. Alec drew his staff, transforming it into a magical blade. Levy resumed his assault, lobbing water balloons. This time, Alec dodged the first before slashing through the next. He feigned an offensive push, drawing Levy in. It was a trap. As Levy activated his self-boosting magic and charged, Alec laid down a thunderbolt trap, exploding before he followed with a slash that cut through Levy. For a moment, Levy stood still, acknowledging Alec's superior magic. But Levy wasn't finished. He produced magical gauntlets covered in dragon scales, granting immense strength. With renewed power, he charged, forcing Alec into a barely managed evasion. The punches cratered the ground. Alec retaliated with a lightning spell, but Levy absorbed it, pushing through the attack to land a punch that sent Alec reeling back. Alec pondered his next move against this formidable opponent. Levy revealed another trick. His gauntlets possessed a healing ability. Recognizing the disadvantage of prolonging the fight, Levy intensified his assault, slashing and hacking. Alec blocked every strike, met by Levy's taunts. Alec escalated the trash talk, provoking the guildmaster into a powerful punch that missed, hitting a wall as Alec nimbly dodged beneath it. Levy pressed on, but Alec blocked again, preparing a finishing blow. To his surprise, the guildmaster proved far tougher, absorbing the damage before launching a double-handed smash that filled the air with dust. As it cleared, Alec stood unharmed, resuming his attack. This time, however, his staff went limp and he fell unconscious, completely depleted of mana. Dorha rushed to him, employing regeneration magic. Suddenly, Rain appeared, mocking Levy for using his ultimate skill against a lesser opponent. Levy dismissed it as a test of Alec's limits, a test he would have passed. Rain then carried Alec to a room for rest, oddly sitting on his legs. They reminisced about old times when the receptionist burst in, urgently needing the guildmaster. Levy grabbed her face and dragged her out. Rain, meanwhile, gathered drinks and asked Yora to recount Alec's recent experiences. By the time she finished, Rain was shaking with anger, realizing his party members had made him carry their gear, handle inventory, forbidden him from using magic beyond defensive spells, and even denied him a dagger. He turned to Yora, questioning how Alec, who was never adept at defensive magic at the academy, had mastered it. Yora explained he'd learned it from scratch, working diligently until he was proficient, his defensive magic now nearly on par with hers. He realized that despite years of babysitting the crown prince, they had banished him, calling him worthless. He shattered the bottle in his hands in anger, waking Alec. Alec, slightly surprised to see Rain, listened as Yora happily announced the guildmaster had granted him the pass. Alec was thrilled, envisioning their ascent to higher dungeon levels as a party. Rain, however, proposed a detour, revenge. He suggested infiltrating the royal city, sneaking into the palace, and confronting the prince and his party. Alec refused, and Yora agreed, citing the prohibition against fighting other parties. Alec placed a hand on Rain's shoulder, stating that adventuring fun was sufficient, and he no longer cared about his past court ordeal. Rain then declared his solution. Becoming the strongest party in the world would surely enrage the prince, and if their country ever faced trouble, they could refuse aid, a prospect that thrilled him. Alec saw this as the best compromise and agreed to the goal. Elsewhere, an injured S-ranked adventurer, Krista, lay receiving bandages, her breathing labored. The guildmaster, Levy, appeared displeased. An S-ranked party in distress meant trouble for the entire guild. Krista explained her party remained stranded and needed urgent assistance. Levy immediately convened an emergency meeting, summoning ranked adventurers for a rescue mission on floor 64. Back in Alec's room, he encountered Kra after a long absence, her dual personalities now well developed. She asked why he wasn't attending the meeting. Alec, not being a ranked adventurer, had stayed behind. Kra instantly healed him with a spell, making one wonder why bandages were used on Krista if such magic existed. Yora and Rain entered, Rain exclaiming with excitement about the rescue mission. They informed Alec that the dungeon presented a unique challenge. Magic was unusable, forcing reliance on potions. The S-ranked party had been wiped out, and Krista had been sent alone for help. Alec inquired if Kra was comfortable working in a magic-nullifying dungeon, given her specialty in healing. She heatedly replied she had opposed it, but the idiot Rain had overridden her veto. As they bickered, Yora turned to Alec, stating the decision to enter the dungeon rested with him, as he would face the main boss. Alec agreed, and they set out for the dungeon. Standing before its entrance, Rain proclaimed this the beginning of their party's legend. They entered the dungeon, its magical affinity preventing healing magic, compelling reliance on potions and evasion. Krista's stranded guild members were near the floor 64 boss, but they first had to clear intermediate levels. Rain realized progressing level by level would be too slow. Yora then produced a magic crystal, a gift from Krista, enabling them to bypass earlier levels and teleport directly to floor 64. Alec recognized it as a vital, rare artifact, while Krista's focus remained solely on rescuing her teammates. Yora mentioned the floor 64 boss was an undead creature, making Kra's healing magic ineffective. With Yora as a support mage, the battle would largely fall on Alec. Rain advised him to conserve mana, letting him handle the lesser enemies to ensure Alec had enough for the undead boss. Crazia, confirming the danger, warned them they were literally fighting death, urging seriousness given the S-ranked party's demise. Instead of discouragement, Rain felt invigorated, declaring their legendary tale began now. Yora tossed the crystal, and they instantly teleported to level 64. They found themselves in a dingy cave, and immediately undead skeletons rose, wielding shields and swords. Rain, unfazed, lunged with his spear, easily defeating them, remarking that floor 64 seemed surprisingly easy. The others watched as more skeletons emerged. Rain fearlessly attacked, felling any who approached. Yora, however, grew worried as Rain moved beyond her support magic's range. She ran after him, calling him back, Alec and Ya following. Ozza commented that Rain should be fine, possessing the potent ancient artifact, the piercing black spear, virtually indestructible and always sharp, a perfect weapon for a brainless idiot. Alec called out, offering help, but Rain dismissed it as child's play. Alec smiled and walked alongside, then sensed a presence behind him, instinctively firing a lightning bolt. The dust cleared, revealing no one. Confused, he told Yora he thought someone was there, perhaps a false alarm. He then drew his sword and charged forward, slashing the air. His strike was blocked by an invisible entity, the Grim Reaper. Rain smiled, impressed Alec wasn't as washed up as he'd thought, admitting he'd sensed the invisible enemy but couldn't handle them. The Grim Reaper attacked, but Alec deflected the blow before returning to Rain. Alec realized Rain's confidence and trust in him as a comrade had fueled his defense. This connection, absent for years, energized him. He leaped into the air with his magic sword, slashing through the Grim Reaper, destroying it. He turned to Yora, who apologized for not mentioning it, while Kasha pointed to Rain, who had suggested it. Alec smiled at Rain, promising to reciprocate one day. Rain replied they first needed to escape the dungeon alive. The four friends huddled together, ready to face the remaining enemies. Alec and Rain charged the skeletons, slashing and hacking, while Yora provided support. Rain executed fancy maneuvers, eliminating every skeleton. Kraja used her precise archery to dispatch those sneaking up on Rain, who herself had to defend with her magic staff, as the skeleton waves seemed unending. Alec called them back, announcing he would wipe them out in one sweep. His teammates regrouped behind him as he cast a powerful thunderbolt, incinerating the entire area, leaving the skeletons charred. Once safe, Rain questioned Alec's continued reliance on Thunderbolt, recalling his wider offensive repertoire at the academy. Alec quickly fabricated an excuse, stating Thunderbolt was the fastest spell to cast. Rain, sensing deception but pressed for time, didn't press further. A monstrous roar echoed ahead, indicating the boss room. Rain, empowered by Yora's reinforcement magic, sprinted towards the sound, faster than lightning. Alec, impressed by both Rain and Yora, followed with the other two girls. Emerging into an opening, they found Rain atop a ledge, observing a giant monster pursuing a bowl-cut adventurer. Alec immediately wanted to help, but Rain seemed indifferent, identifying the mage as Loki, a notorious member of the Rechroma party. Craxia confirmed Loki was a cunning support magician. Alec found it hard to believe as Loki, pathetically screaming, begged Rain for help, vowing to haunt him if he died. Rain remained uninterested. But when Loki tripped and the monster advanced, Alec prepared to intervene. Prajara, however, told him to wait. This was Loki's signature style. Alec watched as the monster approached Loki, triggering a trap spell that blasted it with lava. Alec was astonished, and Kra reiterated Loki's cunning. The monster, stumbling, activated another trap, enduring more fire blasts. Loki turned, laughing at the monster's foolishness. His smile vanished as the enraged monster prepared a powerful magical blast. Loki realized death was imminent, but Rain saved him at the last second. Loki, astounded to be alive, descended to face the enemy with Alec and the girls. The monster attacked Alec, but Yora shielded him. Alec unleashed his thunder spell, but the monster immediately turned towards Rain and Loki. Alec warned them and fired another thunderbolt, hitting the monster directly, but it wasn't enough. Rain, seeing the monster closing in, used a last resort, ducking between its legs to juke it. He then threw Loki towards Krisha, who fell with the crafty support mage. Yora instructed Kar to escort Loki to the ledge while they dealt with the monster. Rain positioned himself, spear ready. They waited until Kra secured Loki before preparing for the final confrontation. Yora boosted Rain's stats with her magic. He charged the monster, dodging its attack, leaping into the air to thrust his spear at its face. The monster proved formidable, shaking Rain off. Yora shielded an injured Rain from the monster's crushing attack, giving him time to recover. Meanwhile, Alec, as if conducting an orchestra, created 5 magic circles around the monster. Loki commented that creating 3 was difficult, implying Alec's mastery was genius. Krogr countered that he could do much more. To Loki's surprise, Alec conjured 20 magic circles. The monster charged, but Rain leaped onto its body, stabbing its tail, giving Alec the time needed to finish his spell. Alec leaped off the monster as Alec completed his preparations, blasting the beast with a thunderbolt combination that paralyzed it. As Alec attempted the finishing blow, the monster surprisingly sidestepped and avoided the attack. It began charging its own magic blast, but Krogr blinded it momentarily. Yora cast a spell, creating huge chains that ensnared the monster. Rain seized the opportunity, throwing his spear, impaling the monster's head, while Alec prepared to finish it. To their surprise, the monster remained mobile, unleashing its powerful magic blast again. Alec stood undaunted, readying a spell known only to 2 people, his teacher elders, its creator, and himself, its student. As the monster fired its blast, Alec used reflection magic, returning the force doubled. The monster, incredibly tough, survived. Barely alive, it attempted the spell again. This time, Alec combined reflection magic with multiple magic circles, enveloping the beast in a fiery inferno, turning it to ash, while Rain cleaved its head in half. Celebrating their victory, they were interrupted by Loki, thanking Alec for his help, revealing he knew of Alec's past as court magician. Alec stated he had left the post. Loki remarked it was a loss for the prince and his party, then dropped a bombshell. The monster was not the true floor boss, but a sub-boss foolish enough to chase him and become isolated. Alec and the party were shocked, wondering about the strength of the actual boss. Loki revealed it was a necromancer in black armor, stating physical attacks were only effective for buying time. He then presented Alec with a magic wand bearing a cross, an ancient artifact that transformed into a sword in Alec's hands. Rain, skeptical, questioned why Loki would give away such a valuable item. Loki laughed, explaining he intended to use Alec as bait in the vanguard, explaining that Alec, appearing as a weak mage, would draw the boss, allowing for an ambush. While Alec and his companions fought in the dungeons, the prince and his party were in a dungeon on the other side of the continent. Unlike Alec's group, who expertly navigated and defeated stronger foes, the prince's party appeared as novices, fleeing caterpillar monsters. The prince, confused, recalled these low-level monsters being a mere warm-up months ago, but now they proved incredibly difficult. He berated his mage to use offensive magic, but she, terrified, froze. Enraged, the prince called them losers, turning to face the monsters himself, vowing to defeat them with a single sword stroke. His attack, however, bounced off their hardened skin, shaking him. A monster slapped him to the ground, forcing his party to rescue him. As they fled, carried by teammates, the prince felt something was wrong. His body felt heavy, movements sluggish, his sword unwieldy. He realized this began when he dismissed Alec. Alec, as court magician, had used support magic so effectively that the prince's party had believed themselves inherently powerful, unaware their abilities were amplified. The prince, however, refused this conclusion, convinced Alec had cursed him in anger. Back at the palace, after being tended to by physicians, he summoned his personal mage, Vogan, to identify the curse. Vogan, after an examination, found no curse. The prince found this unbelievable, given his struggles with a level 30 monster, having progressed beyond level 40. Vogan pondered, then suggested the reason might be the absence of support magic. This pricked the prince's ego. He retorted that support magic was useless, employed only by weak adventurers. Vogan, knowing the prince's ignorance, refrained from speaking his mind, instead asking if Alec hadn't warned them about the 30th floor's difficulty, specifically regarding magic reinforcement. The prince dismissed Alec as a common peasant, incapable of knowing such things. Vogan, however, doubted this, mentioning Alec was part of the legendary party that set record-breaking depths, reaching floor 68 before graduation. The prince laughed, dismissing such tales as plebeian fabrications. Vogan realized further discussion was futile. A messenger then entered, summoning the prince to court as the king wished to speak about Alec, the former court mage. The prince, accompanied by Vogan, met his father on the throne. The king inquired if the prince remembered court mage elders. The prince, being very young, had no recollection. The king explained that years ago, a noble named Elders served as court mage, his influential family facilitating his selection. But Elders differed from his predecessors, challenging discrimination and advocating for societal reform. Angered by this defiance, the king banished him, stripping him of titles and family name. The prince chuckled, deeming the fool deserved it for addressing a king so disrespectfully. His father looked at him sadly, stating Elders was different. He had enrolled in the Magic Academy as a commoner, aced his studies, and graduated as valedictorian. This led to his reappointment as court mage, this time solely based on merit. Elders, the king recounted, persisted for years, urging him to treat commoners better, citing one who had saved his life. The king, however, never listened, and one day Elders vanished. The prince, bewildered by his father's words, finally understood the king's point. It was time to reform the kingdom, recognizing the need for talented commoners like Alec. The prince, incredulous, called Alec a useless peasant of no worth. The king produced a torn parchment left by Alec, detailing the entire 30th floor, its monsters, and clearing methods. The king asserted only someone who had repeatedly cleared that floor could possess such detailed knowledge. The prince was shocked, protesting that they couldn't seek a commoner's help, a notion contradicting his upbringing. The king, looking down in shame, admitted his past methods were flawed and would be corrected, judging people by skill, not class. The prince stared in disbelief before excusing himself, feigning illness. Back in the main dungeon, Loki continued his plotting with the others regarding the floor boss. He instructed Alec to use only the sword, eschewing magic. Alec questioned the point, as the monster was immune to physical hits. Raja suddenly understood. Loki aimed to trick the monster into perceiving Alec as a swordsman, not a mage, thus a lesser threat. She doubted the monster's intelligence, but Loki insisted it was intelligent, a swordmaster who could plan ahead, intriguing Alec. They agreed on the plan, but the boss room was distant. Loki offered a solution: teleportation. Yora was horrified, deeming teleportation magic top secret. Rain, however, suspected Loki would steal it. While Rain drew a magic circle, Alec discussed with Yora pinning blame on Loki if caught. Alec remained uncertain about Loki's trustworthiness, but Yora conceded he was reliable, citing his successful raid on a high-ranking dungeon 2 years prior with no casualties. Yora added that Loki's party leader was also well-regarded, easing Alec's concerns. He stood, smiling, ready for the final showdown. As the magic circle completed, they stepped onto it, and the area glowed purple. Yora marveled at Loki's teleportation spell. He warned them to be alert, as they would materialize directly in the boss room. They landed atop Rain, immediately facing a colossal dark knight battling a 3-person party. The party's mage urged someone to fetch help, needing a ranked mage or higher. A girl ran back while a fighter lunged, his attack blocked, as the mage blasted fire magic ineffective against the knight's armor. Realizing they were outmatched, the elf pondered his options. Before he could formulate a plan, Rain sprinted past, thrusting his spear. The knight blocked, pushing him back. Rain, excited by the monster's strength, engaged. Alec attempted a sneak attack from behind, but the knight dodged. The boss turned on its new opponents, engaging in a fierce sword and spear battle while Kra and Loki escorted the other 2 adventurers to safety, despite being attacked by 2 fresh adventurers. The floor boss showed no weakness, pressing its assault, tiring Alec and Rain. Rain tried a new tactic, lunging with his sword drawn. As expected, the knight leaped to dodge. Rain, however, pinned its cloak to the floor with his spearhead, holding it in place, creating an opening for Alec. Alec attacked, beheading the knight with a well-placed strike. As they believed the fight over, the knight regenerated, rising headless and advancing. Alec realized it was a headless rider, the previous monster its mount. The knight accelerated, attacking with incredible speed, but Alec barely blocked the blow that could have killed them all. Rain lunged, and together they pushed the knight back. The battle raged, the knight reattaching its head with a burst of energy. It struck Alec again, who barely blocked, but was blasted into a wall. Yora's shield saved his life. He downed a healing potion, tagging in for Rain to allow regeneration. They continued their uphill battle against the undead monster while Loki pursued his plan. He revealed himself, the arena glowing purple, unnerving the knight who recognized Loki as a mage, its only potential demise. The knight charged Loki with incredible speed, slashing his chest before Alec could react. Loki fell bleeding, but it was an illusion. The knight was now precisely where Loki intended, trapped in icicles, slowed. Rain immediately intervened, using a teleportation trap to emerge behind the monster, stabbing it before retreating. A smaller fighter also joined. The knight slipped away, only to be trapped again, enraging it, causing it to scale the wall towards Loki. Knowing Loki's evasiveness, the knight targeted Kriya. Loki blocked the attack with his magic blade. Yora reinforced him, creating chains to restrain the knight. Loki, though not a fighter, held it long enough for the trap to ensnare it. Spent, he fell, telling Alec to finish it with his insane magic. And that, in essence, is where our story pauses for now.